Welcome to the Finding Purpose LiveCast, where we feature authors, leaders, and speakers of purpose on a live platform to have truly authentic conversations. And now your guest host, Kurt David.
Hi, I'm Kurt David, co-founder of PurposePoint, and your guest interviewer today. Today's interview is going to be very special because actually normally this person is the interviewer, but today's the interviewee, and that's our founder of PurposePoint, Davin Salvagno. Davin, great to have you on the show today.
Hey, Kurt, it's great to be on this side of the conversation, and it's refreshing to have someone else asking the questions today. So thank you for stepping in and asking me to do this.
Yeah, you've been interviewing, I think you said 16, 17, this is 17th now as a result of these PurposePoint, Finding Purpose LiveCast, and we're pretty excited to have you on. Well, usually I don't have this large of an introduction to start off, but I have to go back almost a couple of years, Davin. I was sitting in a C12 meeting, and for those people that may not know what a C12 is a national organization of Christian business owners and CEOs, for which I've been a member. And I remember sitting in this meeting almost a couple of years ago, Davin, and sitting there, and there was somebody new and sitting in that meeting. And as I was watching and looking around the room, and as we went through the meeting, I noticed that this person was dressed pretty sharp. Had a lot of great insight and input during that meeting. It was pretty impressive, actually, right off the bat, for being somebody that was sitting there new to me as a result. And as a result, you and I got to know each other.
Well, that's a very kind description of how we met. For a second, I was wondering who you were talking about because I was in the meeting. I'm like, wait, yes, that's exactly how we met. And
well, it was bigger than that, though. It started a conversation, and the more we started meeting and having conversations, we started talking about a bigger picture, beyond C12. We started talking about a vision, and you started sharing. You started sharing with me a vision and a dream that you had about organizing some people to have an impact on other people's lives. And as we got talking and more speaking about this, we were talking about keynote speakers and perhaps coaches and trainers. And all of a sudden it was like, well, wait a minute, what about if we start an organization that does this? And that was your vision. And I'll never forget that day because it was very impactful for me to think, wow, okay, this is a great idea. And it was your idea and it was your vision. And here we are 2 years later and living this dream and living this vision and impacting others' lives as a result.
Yeah, it's been, I remember that day like it was yesterday. And, first I would say, and I know you would agree with this, right? I mean, it was ultimately God's vision and kind of put upon my heart in the moment. And we had a conversation and we were sharing, I guess you could say war stories, if you will, of keynotes that you had done and keynotes that I had done and kind of what was missing in that space and how great it would be if there was a fellowship of speakers and coaches that when they get out there and they share what's on their hearts and minds, that it goes beyond engaging and inspiring. It actually moves to impact. It's not about them. It's not about, collecting their speaking fee or selling their book or whatever. It's about impacting just one person who has an opportunity to hear what it is they have to share. And so it's been very humbling to see how far we have come in that journey from just a conversation that you and I had 2 short years ago to the original 4 or 5 people that we kind of pulled together to today, a fellowship of about 20 people who share, the same vision and values.
And thus was that seminal moment of PurposePoint. And we're excited, and we're going to talk more about that certainly later on in our conversation here. But let's back up quite a bit, actually, because long before PurposePoint was a thought, was an idea, was a vision, Davin Salvagno had lots of ideas and lots of visions. Let's talk about those foundational years for Davin. I mean, let's talk about what is the foundation of Davin Salvagno? Where did it start? How did it start?
Wow. Well, I'm short of sharing my entire story, which I know I've shared before on this live cast and also in the Finding Purpose at Work book. I was growing up on the East Coast in Philly, was raised there. And I'd always wanted to become a teacher. I just always had a passion for seeing people's lives impacted in some way. And a lot of that reason was because teachers growing up had a huge influence on my life. They were kind of my heroes in school for a lot of reasons. And there was something about how I experienced their impact in my life that I wanted to have that same impact on others. So I never realized that education or that path was something that I wanted to go after. In fact, I had a hard time even picking a major or a topic. For me, I just wanted to impact people because of how other people had impacted me at such a young age. And so while going to school to be a teacher, like anybody else, you have to find a way to put yourself through school. So I got into retail and was working in retail while putting myself through school. And while in those different retail jobs with several different companies, people very quickly found that I had, I guess, a unique gift to be able to get very excited very quickly about things. And my wife, Amy, will tell you that, and she's probably listening today, but sometimes I come across some new concept or idea and it's just like a squirrel moment. And I get really excited and I come up with all these ideas and just passionately want to share them with others. And so with every company that I had joined, I bought in very quickly to what their purpose, what their mission was. And I would get very excited about it and had no problem telling other people about that. So I went to school for teaching and ended up very quickly in marketing because companies found out that I just had a passionate way of telling their story. And then that led into actually helping them tell their story better than maybe sometimes they were telling it and engaging their workforce around that. And I ended up in operations. And then eventually transitioned out of leadership roles and operations into human resources because my passion really wasn't about the message. It was really about how the message impacted people, and people was the foundation of human resources. And so that's kind of the shortest I think I've ever told my professional journey. But through those years of not becoming a teacher, I ended up becoming a teacher. Marcus Buckingham has this standout survey, and he has different roles that he says are our primary and secondary roles, or our strengths or competencies or gifts or whatever you want to assign to that. And mine was always that I'm a educator and a stimulator, or as he puts it, teacher and a stimulator.
It's a great way to put it. Yeah.
I just found out that I do that in a different way, right? Today, I teach and educate from a different platform. And so lots of ideas along the way, but it always came back to helping people see something or hear something in a way that maybe they hadn't seen it or heard it before that would help positively impact their life.
No, that makes sense. Well, let's back up a little bit. You mentioned about how teachers had a very positive impact on you, and that was one of your influences to look at teaching early on. Was there maybe a grade level or a certain teacher or a certain event that really impacted you to cause you to think that?
Yeah. Man, it's almost like you would have thought that I asked you to ask that question with how well that's going to tie to this answer, but I didn't. That was a very natural question. There was a very specific moment, actually, when I was in fourth grade, and I'd walked into a store and with my parents, and I had seen one of my teachers shopping. And I got really excited because I saw my teacher outside of the classroom. I don't know what it is about that. I think for whatever reason, it's like when we see even my kids today, when they see their teachers outside of the classroom, it's a very special moment, especially during the whole, coronavirus lockdown moment. We actually had our son's teacher, Bennett, his teacher came to our house and dropped off a balloon for his birthday. And it was just a very special moment. And so this was a special moment for me. And when I saw my fourth grade teacher in the store, and, I went over, and her name was Miss Jacobs, and I said, "Oh, Miss Jacobs." And she saw me, right? She teaches, I don't know, 25 kids in a day. And she's been there for probably 20 years. And so she's had 500 kids that have come through her classroom. But in that moment, she saw me, right? She knew who I was, my name, all of that. And she engaged me in a moment in that way that made me feel like I was the only kid in her class, even though I know that I wasn't. And so there was something about her seeing me that captivated me. And I thought, I want to be able to have that same impact. I want to be able to see people in the moment, regardless of how many people, I might be in a classroom or whatever the case, or that I might meet in this life. She saw me in that moment and engaged me in that moment and made me feel like I was the only person in the room, in a grocery aisle, in a grocery store. And it was, that was probably, if you were to ask me to go back and say, when was the first time you actually ever learned something in this life about people or leadership or impact or whatever, it was that moment. I really can't remember anything prior to that, other than that she was the very first person that impacted me. And I could tell other stories of teachers, but that was definitely
She made you feel special. You felt special as a result. And that's kind of what you want to do today. You want people to feel special. You want to put the spotlight on people, right? That's the attitude that you have. Well, it wasn't just teaching, though. Tell us about your infatuation with weather maps, though. You had something with weather maps early on that you wanted to possibly head in that direction as well, from what I understand.
Wait, I don't think I've ever told you this story. Is someone plugging you questions? How do you know about that?
One of the things about being an interviewer is you have to do a little research. And so...
Yeah. So, wow, we've never had this conversation. So yeah, I did have a fascination. I wanted to become a meteorologist. So my other thing was, other than being a teacher, I had a fascination with the weather, and I really don't know where that fascination came with, but I was glued to the Weather Channel when cable first came out. I had a map of the United States. It was a puzzle map. And I laminated it and had dry erase markers and used to draw weather systems on it and kind of predict where it's going to go. And I remember this one time in 1996, living in Philly, we had this blizzard, 31 inches of snow. To this day, I think it's the most we'd ever had. And school shut down for 2.5 weeks. I think we went to school almost the end of June that year. And my teacher, again, coming back to heroes, he was our science teacher, and we were kind of like debating, and he's like, "Oh, we're going to get 4 to 8 inches of snow." They were predicting like 2 to 4 inches. And he's like, "No, we'll probably get 4 to 8." And I was looking at high pressure systems and all of this stuff. And I'm like, "No, I think the system is going to stall, and then this is going to happen and whatnot. And I think, we might get over a foot of snow." And we actually bet a soft pretzel on it. Philly has these amazing soft pretzels. They're so good. And they used to serve them in school. And he says, "Okay, listen, if you're right, when you come to school on Monday, I'll buy you your soft pretzel," which was 25 cents at the time. "But if I'm right, you have to buy me my soft pretzel." And I didn't see him that Monday because the system stalled and it dropped 31 inches of snow. Then I saw him 2 weeks later, and he bought me soft pretzels for a week. But I don't know, maybe because I got that one thing right, I felt I should be a meteorologist. That never happened, but I'm amazed that you even knew that story.
Well, I mean, teacher, meteorologist, the business operations, right? I mean, that's kind of the journey or the thought pattern that happened to get to where you are today. And we're very happy that you came down this path. And I'm sure many people are as well along your journey, that the business operations side, the marketing side. We know, though, that Davin, that many times through life, it's challenges and adversity that form us, right? What were some of the challenges and adversity that you feel professionally, personally, that you faced that helped you to become one of the best in marketing and operations at that time? What do you think helped you?
Yeah, well, it's very kind to state that maybe I was one of the best during that time. I don't know. I feel I did my job well, but I appreciate that. But there was definitely a lot of adversity on the way. Growing up, my parents, and I love them both. They have a great family. But they decided to part ways when I was just 5 years old, and my sister was 1. We went to go live with my grandparents, and that was a very unique childhood situation, being taken out of a kind of a normal family environment and then having to live with your grandparents, and jumping into schools that many times moving schools at a young age, it was hard to build friends and relationships early on because of kind of how that had happened. We went to go live with my grandparents, and we went back with them, and we went to go live back again. And it was just this constant revolving door of an environment, being young. And then we even moved to a bad part of the city one time. And there was, I remember this clearly as yesterday, going to school one day, and I was just in 3rd grade, Kurt. And I was approached by an older kid who wanted me to buy drugs from him. And I'm in 3rd grade. I don't have any money. And he's like, "Well, I'm going to give you this, and you're going to owe me this." I'm like, "I don't want it, whatever." And he had a baseball bat in his hand, and he hit me over the head with the baseball bat and split my head open. And I ran home holding my head, bleeding profusely, and had to go to the hospital, lots of stitches. And I think that was a big wake up call to my then separated parents at the time, that we need to change environments. My sister had a similar experience where she got hit in the head with a rock. But we just had a very challenging childhood in from an environment standpoint growing up. And then there was some sort of normalcy, I will say, between 6th grade and 11th grade. And then in 12th grade, my senior year of high school, with my parents living fully remarried and living fully different lives at this point, my mom and our family here decided to move to Michigan from Philly. And that was a big change for me. At the time, I was a great student. And I had all accelerated classes, honors classes. I had perfect attendance almost every single year with the exception of 2 years. One because my grandfather died, and the other because I had to get my wisdom teeth taken out. Mm. And in my senior year of high school, that move shook me. I had moved whatever stability I had to come to a state that I had no knowledge of, and I just checked out. I had a bad attitude. I went from a 4.0 all A honor student to my GPA my senior year dropping to a 2.76. Mm. And so instead of going to Penn State like I would have, I ended up going to Macomb Community College, and kind of had to start over and check my attitude and kind of dig my way out of a mess that I created because of how I reacted to a situation. I've shared this before. Circumstances don't define us, choices do. I made a lot of poor choices my senior year with how I reacted to that I ended up paying for a very long time.
What did you learn from that? What did you learn as a positive today?
I learned not to be a victim of those circumstances and of the adversity. I will tell you that from the age of 18 until the age of 23, so for that 5 years following high school, I played the victim of that. I blamed my parents. I had a bitterness about it. I was terrible in relationships because of it. I had a lot of bad habits, right? As soon as I turned 21, alcohol was a popular thing to me. Because it was a great way to fit in with other people and to be accepted, and staying up late and closing bars. And I love music. I used to do karaoke until 2:00 in the morning, Wednesday through Saturday, every day. Not that there's anything wrong with karaoke, but just I was not living a purposeful life. I was just drowning in my sorrows of what was my circumstances because I didn't want to live in Michigan. I was robbed of a childhood that maybe other people had. I was robbed of my senior year that maybe other people had, and certainly not in a way that people this year were robbed of their senior year. Perspective is everything. But at the age of 23, I had grown up Catholic my whole life. And I knew about God. I didn't really have a relationship with God. I even maybe blamed him for a lot that had gone on. But at the age of 23, I saw The Passion of the Christ. And that movie shook me because I had heard about what Jesus had done, but I didn't know why he did it. And so I had a lot of questions. I'd never picked up a Bible. And at the age of 23, I went to Borders, which is no longer around. And I didn't know which version of the Bible to get. So I picked up like 5 of them, the NIV, King James, all this, whatnot. And I love coffee. Everyone knows that I love coffee. And so I went to Starbucks, and which at the time, for a very brief time, they were open 24 hours. I was working at Costco. There was a Starbucks in the parking lot. And I would just go there and I would read the Bible beginning to end, just looking for answers, right? And so I started to re-examine my life differently. And a lot of things changed. I at that time in my life, I become a Christian. I accepted Christ in my life. There were so many transformations that changed in my life. I had no desire to stay at the bar until 2:00 in the morning. I had no desire to really get drunk anymore. I had no desire to do a lot of the things that I had done. And the biggest thing that I probably learned, Kurt, was forgiveness. And I had forgiven a lot of people that probably I didn't need to because I blamed them wrongly. But I had also forgiven myself. And so, well, I feel like I blamed a lot of other people, but I also blamed myself for, not living the life that I thought that I was going to live, not finishing, going to the school I thought I was going to go to, not getting the degree that I thought that I was going to get, because I was blaming myself for the choices that I made. I blamed others for the circumstances that led to the choices, and then I blamed myself for the choices. So what I had done was forgiven those that I assigned blame to for the circumstances, and then forgiven myself for the blame that I placed on myself for the choices that I had made. And so it was like a brand new start at the age of 20.
Very powerful. Yeah, very powerful. Well, how does that, because that's a very foundational part of that part of your life, right? I mean, it really changed your attitude, to really be blunt about it. Your attitude changed, your whole perspective on life had changed, your faith had changed in a sense of became deeper. That adversity, that challenge that you experienced, How do you think it really positively impacted it to the way it is today?
Well, I think what it's taught me is a perpetual gratitude. I have this never ending sense of gratefulness about a lot of things. And I think a big part of that is looking at how my life was growing up, what we didn't have, circumstances I found myself in, and then looking at the blessed life that we have today. You know, I'm married to an absolutely amazing woman, and I'm not saying that because she might be listening. She is. In fact, on my phone, her name is Grace, even though her real name is Amy. And the reason why is because to me, I never thought that I would find love and happiness and stability in relationship because I didn't see it growing up, right? And so to me, she's God's gift of grace to me. So I've always called her Grace, and her name is Grace on my phone, even though her name is Amy. So there's this perpetual gratitude that I'm always thankful for. My kids, you know, I have an amazing 9-year-old daughter named Vera and an incredible 6-year-old son named Bennett. And, you know, sometimes I can be very impatient with them because kids can drive us crazy, but I'm constantly, there's moments where I'm staring at them and I'm just thankful and sitting here and saying, you know, who am I? You know, in 2 Samuel, one of the verses that has always spoke out to me is, who am I, Lord, that you have brought me and my family this far? And I always had that in the back of my head. In fact, that was part of the reason that we gave Bennett his middle name, Samuel, in addition to my grandfather's name being Sam. And so in every circumstance, I've learned to be grateful, right? Whether Paul says this, you know, I know what it is to have nothing. I know what it is to have plenty. And in every circumstance, I've learned to be grateful. So forgiveness, grace, gratitude, I've approached every circumstance with that. And so that makes adversity a lot easier to deal with.
Yeah.
It makes, you know, circumstances a lot easier to deal with. But what it's also taught me, and this is probably where purpose came from, is it's taught me to find the purpose in every circumstance, in every situation. I feel that whenever we deal with things, we've heard this before. I never win or lose. I either win or I learn, right? Everything that I've ever been through, I've always been able to see how God's been able to use that. There's things that I went through, storms that I went through in my childhood, that's like, God, really, how are you going to use this? But then there were people he put in my path later in life that I was meant to either encourage or speak to or uplift, that had I not walked through those desert moments, I wouldn't be able to speak to them. And
Absolutely.
so I have found the purpose point, if you will, in every moment. I've learned to be gratitude and just ask, you know, God, what is it that you're doing this? What is the purpose of this moment? And so then this concept of finding purpose, which is the name of the live cast, and finding purpose at work, all of that came from the spot of forgiveness, gratitude, grace, and then what is the purpose? And then really sitting back and looking at things differently from maybe how they might not actually seem.
Yeah, it's very important time to bring that up, Davin, because, you know, that's the whole foundation of PurposePoint, right? Is to help others and help others find that, live it, and continue to share it with others, right? Find, live, and share. What do you feel like your purpose is today? I mean, what do you feel, if I were to say, what is Davin Salvagno's purpose? What would be your purpose? What would be the description of that purpose?
Yeah, and this almost might sound like a shameless plug, but I know that our tagline is engage, inspire, and impact. And while we came up with that, I really feel that that's my personal purpose, to engage others wherever they're at in their journey, in their life, whether that's professionally, in the workplace, and organizationally, because we do a lot of organizational coaching and consulting and obviously a lot of keynote talks in that space, but also on a personal level, engaging people wherever they're at in life, and then inspiring them, helping them to see things from a perspective that maybe they don't see it, just like I talked about. You know, what is the purpose in this, and approaching that from the place that, you know, of forgiveness, grace, gratitude, all of those things, but also from creativity and using some of the things from my professional background to help them see things or connect things in a way that maybe they don't see it, so that it ultimately translates into impact, right? To me, everything is measured in impact. I almost look at like time and I go, you know, how can we make this moment impactful in every circumstance? And so for me, currency of life has never been dollars, right? There's people who are chasing dollars. There's people who are focused on how much they're making, how much they're saving, and all of that's important, right? We want to be financial stewards. But to me, I measure every day in impact, right? Where did we make an impact today? How did this event make an impact? How are we as an organization making an impact? How did this conversation have as an impact? You know, how did I make an impact at home? Where could I have been better? You know, even this morning, right? I got up, I worked out, I had breakfast. My wife was doing her quiet time. You know, the kids came down, gave them both of a hug. But in my mind, I'm like, I gotta get to the office. I gotta get all this stuff done. I have meetings. I got a call at 9 o'clock. Right. And my son just wanted to show me, you know, he was watching Luigi on his iPad and he saw something funny. And I watched it for a minute, but I knew I had to go. And he wanted me to keep watching. He's like, Dad, watch. I'm like, I can't do this right now. I gotta go. And I left. And I thought about that moment the whole ride here, right? It was like, what was the impact that I had on him in that moment? Did he feel like I just kind of like brushed him off because I was too busy or whatever? So I'm always looking at the impact of every moment, every conversation, of every event, of every talk, of how organizations operate, of how people operate. So it's my purpose, I feel, is to engage people and organizations wherever they're at in their journey, to inspire them to look at things or think about things differently so that it'll positively impact them in some way.
Well, and Davin, I think it's not just you saying that. I have a quote from somebody very close to you I'd like to read to you. And it's not just your words of you saying that you do this. Here's the quote from somebody very close to you. It says, "He is in the business sector who he is in the church community, who he is with our friends, who he is as a husband and a dad." So it's not just you saying that. This is from, obviously, Amy, of recognizing what you do and how you do it on a day-to-day basis. So final question I have for you, Davin, is what is it you want your legacy to be? What do you want to be remembered by?
That was very sweet. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Kurt, for having a conversation to have her say that. You know, being remembered is not really something that I think about. I know there's a lot of people that talk about legacy and building your legacy. And, you know, for me, it would be what Amy just said, right? I would want Amy to feel that I was always by her side and there for her and always saw her the way that I tell her that I see her. Even when she might not believe it sometimes, I always see her in every circumstances. You know, the day we got married as my bride, and I know she hates that sometimes I call her that in public, but it's because I always see her that way, even though it's been 13 years. That my kids would always see me as their fun and loving dad that loves to, you know, chase them and tickle them and laugh with them, even though sometimes I might be impatient with them. And even when they're older, to see me as a dad who loved them dearly and wanted to spend as much time with them as I could, even when sometimes I was busy or traveling or whatever, and just to enjoy just their presence, even if we weren't playing a game or whatever, just being in the same room and just watching them. I love observing them and just seeing their personalities come out. In the church community, just helping others, right? I mean, I love to serve, not because I could say, look at what I did or anything like that, but just because of how I see how it impacts people and how they end up feeling as a result of something that I may have done, not because I'd done it. And even in the community, I mean, we're talking about all the stuff that we're doing in Mount Clemens, right? And what we want to do in this city. Again, it's not to have some name in a article that says, you know, look what Davin did or what, you know, PurposePoint did, but just to actually see community restored and lives transformed and impact having. And so, and for those that will end up, you know, reading Finding Purpose at work, you know, I don't, for me, it's not about it becoming a New York Times bestseller or becoming like Ken Blanchard, who wrote the foreword, or Patrick Lencioni or Simon Sinek or anybody else that had a quote in it, or Brené Brown. Or for me, it's about if one person reads that book and it changes their life in some way, then it was worth writing the book. Mm-hmm. So it's not about how I want to be remembered. It's about the impact that I have while I'm here.
Well, Davin, I think it's safe to say that you've had a great impact and will continue to do so with PurposePoint, as well as personally and other professional ventures as a speaker, as an author, soon to be author, and very excited to see that book come out and very excited to see the impact that it's going to continue to have. Davin Salvagno, I thank you for your time, founder of PurposePoint, impactor, influencer. I appreciate your time today, Davin.
Thank you, Kurt, for doing this and for sitting on the other side of the camera today and for setting this up the way that you did.
Yeah, no, I'm Kurt David, and that wraps up another Finding Purpose LiveCast. You can find past LiveCast on our website, which is PurposePoint.com. But look forward to seeing Davin back in this seat again as an interviewer. Davin, thanks again, and thanks for all the audience, for those of you that were watching live, as well as those in the future as well. Thanks again.
Thank you.